This is Leaders in the Trenches, and your host today is Gene Hammett.
Hi, this is Gene Hammett. I'm your host of Leaders in the Trenches. My question for you today is, as a leader, do you know the strengths of your individual employees? I love that question because it really is not about finding the weaknesses that are inside them or the opportunities for improvement, but it is about understanding the strengths. I have with me a special guest today, Darren Virassammy. I probably mispronounced the last name, but Darren's with 34 Strong, and he runs as a COO of the company, helping companies understand how to better look at the strengths and use the strengths of individuals and their own talents to grow companies, and really creating a culture that really is something of a competitive advantage, if you will. So Darren and I talk about this on the episode about finding your strengths. And so make sure you listen to the full episode here at Leaders in the Trenches. Hi, Darren. How are you?
I'm doing great, Gene. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Excited to have you to talk about a different aspect of leadership and growth. I've already let our audience know a little bit about you, so I'd love for them to hear it in your own voice about who you are and who you serve.
Well, my name's Darren Virassammy. I am the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of a company called 34 Strong. We are based in Sacramento, California, and we work actually all over the United States, actually all over the globe. We've started doing some work down in the Caribbean as well. So that's not too bad. You know, what we really do, Gene, is we believe that every employee deserves a great place to work, and that any workplace can be great. But that does not happen by doing a single team building day or just having a fun day or putting pinball machines in. There's some real work that we have to get into to create culture around employee engagement and really focused on a strengths-based approach to human development.
You know, it's interesting that we start off with, a lot of people think that they can have a weekend or they can do a 2-day leadership experience, and those things are good. They can be the start of something, but it's not about intensity. It's more about consistency. Have you seen that?
You know, absolutely. The analogy I love to give, Gene, is if you think about it, wouldn't it be great in January if we could go to the gym on like January 2nd and just work out for 8 hours straight and just go grind and say, you know what, check that box. For the year, I'm going to pig out for the rest of the year, not exercise, not do any of that. What are we really going to get a healthy life over the course of the year? Absolutely not. And creating culture is much the same way. You can't do it in just a single feral swoop. It's something that we have to sustain over time. And whether we think we have a focus on culture or we don't think we have one, we have one. And that you can either be intentional and purposeful in designing it or accidental.
Well, when you think about culture, I've got a definition I use within my speeches and when I do with my clients. What would be that definition and how you would describe culture?
You know, it's the shared thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and beliefs that are held by the majority of your team members. Southwest Airlines is a great example of this. The servant's heart is one of their key values that they have, and you can see that embodied in their employees at all levels of the organization. And that doesn't just mean serving customers, it means serving just in their community to each other for their team members. That's just a hallmark of culture because it's a shared belief amongst the majority of your associates.
I want to ask you about the name of the company too, 34 Strong. 34 happens to be my favorite number. You don't know that. It was my favorite college football player.
Okay.
And I want to know where the name came from.
Yeah, great question. We do get that question from time to time. So one of the tools that we really work very closely with is the Clifton Strengths or the Strengths Finder 2.0 assessment as a way of identifying talent and how we align talent in organizations. When Dr. Clifton did his work and asked the question, what happens when we focus on what's right with people instead of fixating on what's wrong with them, he did the research to identify how talent naturally exists within people. And what he found, Gene, is in his research, he spent 10 years studying almost 2 million people. And what he ended up finding is there's these 34 buckets of talent, or themes as they're called, that exist in a natural ranked order for all of us from 1 through 34. And we came up with the name 34 Strong basically as a tribute to the fact that all of us are very, very unique in the way that those are going to be ordered. But all strengths are created equal. There's not the good talents and the bad talents. We just have who we are, and we can all be incredibly strong if we become self-aware and really learn how to aim that potential towards the outcomes that we want to get to. So that's how we came up with the name 34 Strong.
I like the fact that you have frameworks. I don't use them a lot within my work, but I have used some of them. We have used Cliff Finders, Strength Finders. One of the things that you realize that most people don't realize when it comes to developing talent?
You know, that is a great question. One of the things that we think of with talent is a lot of times, what do we hear? Oh, you're strong at these things, and here's your opportunities, right? And we frame that opportunities, and what it actually is it's our areas of weakness. So when we think of talent, a lot of times the human development strategy, the traditional human development strategy that permeates most organizations and our society at large, is actually not to identify where you're strong and invest more time there. It comes at the lens of, hey, let's identify where your areas of weakness are, the deficit approach. And the thought is that our greatest opportunities for growth and development lie in our areas of weakness. But what the strengths-based approach has found out is our greatest opportunities to tap our capacity for excellence individually from a self standpoint, and more importantly, from an organizational standpoint, doesn't lie in our areas of weakness. It actually lies in identifying where we're strongest. It's the notion simply of this, that the A+ for that student, that's not the top of the box. That's not the top of where they can get. That's just a starting point of showing their capacity for excellence. That's where they can really, really grow and make the huge impact is from that A+ going upwards.
When you think about working with teams and getting them to increase their communication, increase collaboration, and improving trust, what is one of the exercises that you do most often?
You know, we have an exercise that we utilize, and even if people haven't taken the Strengths Finder, it's called Grind, Greatness, Genius. I believe in the show notes, actually, we've been able to make that a link to that exercise available for your users. We'll be able to provide that for you. So if any of them want to actually go through this exercise, it can be pretty powerful. But what it is, you know, Gene, sometimes we don't get a chance to stop long enough to identify what are the things that I'm doing that I feel really energized, and what are the things that I'm really in my genius zone. So the whole point of Grind, Greatness, Genius is we've broken it into these 3 different buckets, and they'll see it's a single sheet exercise. But you identify what are the things that you're doing on a regular basis in your work, in your life, in different areas. And you try and categorize them. And we've got instructions on there. But the things that are in your grind zone, Gene, these are things you might want to consider, geez, I have to do this, or maybe I could break my ankle instead, right? Maybe you get more excited about the concept of breaking your ankle as opposed to doing that particular task. The things in the zone of greatness, these are the elements that you do that you feel really strong at. And the interesting thing is some of these qualities, Gene, can be elements of things that we do that we don't even realize are actual talents, right? So some people naturally, for instance, just take psychological ownership of what they say they're going to do, and they just do that. And they don't realize that's a huge talent, because not everybody does that. So that identifies our areas of greatness. And then genius is just the things that you are clearly better than well over 10,000 people, well over 1 million people at. You just do it so naturally, you're on that next level. Nobody can really hold a light to you on it.
You know, you mentioned this word ownership, and I don't know how familiar you are with my work, but I work with studying the fastest growth companies out there,
Yep.
5,000.
Yep.
And I've done hundreds of interviews, and last year I did a burst of like 51 interviews, and the average growth there of those companies was 2,700% over a 3-year period.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the data, and what I found was leadership that inspires people to feel like owners. And a core element behind that is they feel like they're growing inside the role that they have, and that someone really is investing into that. And they show up engaged to work. How does that align with the work that you guys do through, the strength work and everything else?
Well, a big part, it's a huge part of the equation. A big part of the work that we're doing, so strengths is one piece of the puzzle, but the overarching outcome that you're working to get to is a sustained culture of employee engagement. And when employees are getting to show up engaged, they are taking that ownership because guess what, Gene? They're feeling valued for being valuable. They're being valued for their unique contributions so they can own themselves. And the term that we really have gotten into utilizing is people can be confidently vulnerable, right? So when you're really engaged in your work, you can be confident in where you shine and vulnerable in where you're blind. So you can be confident in where you shine and confident in where you're blind, and be able to be on a team where, hey, you know what? I know that I don't do that incredibly well, but I know Gene's on my team and I can make that call to him and he's going to have my back. And through that, greatness can actually transpire. So in that process, we can take the ownership, not of just checking the box and getting the task done, but in taking ownership of the outcome that we're responsible for, even if there's elements. Some of those tasks that we have might fall in the grind zone. We can still get to that level of greatness with the outcome because it opens up the door for the team awareness.
When we were talking earlier, Darren, we talked about some of the results that increasing employee engagement gets. I would love for you to go through some of those things, and I don't know how you back them up, and if you can share with us. But one of them was increased profit. So if you have a better employee engagement, it's increasing profit 14 to 29%.
That is correct, and that is all based from some Gallup data that they've had over the years. That was from a study they conducted just a couple years back, and the reason that's a key reference point is because that was one of their largest data studies on that particular information. But the profitability, the range that you'll see, so you've got a 14% to a 29% increase in profitability for organizations that have started to shift from this deficit-based approach to human development to one where they're focused on strengths, identifying what's right with their people, and really pointing that to the lens of employee engagement. One of the other elements, there's two other ones that I wanted to bring up as a result of that. Attrition's costly, right, Gene? Attrition's incredibly costly to organizations, right? Many
Absolutely.
Of your clients, and those hyper-growth companies, if you're just spitting off people, that can actually detract your growth in not such a helpful way. So the attrition rates, this is an important one, and the range is massive. The lower attrition that comes with teams that have adapted this approach tends to be in the range of 6% to 72% lower attrition. Now, the big question comes, why are there these significant ranges? And a big part of it comes to exactly where we started our conversation. Do you want to do the gym workout for the one day on the 5th of January and then pretend like it doesn't matter for the rest of the year, or do you want to create sustenance? The organizations, the companies that were on the higher end of those percentages, where it's sustained for the longer term, were the ones that embraced folding it into their culture. They didn't just do it as a single day. The short-term introductions, little blips that you get, it does create a little bit of a bump, and you will see that, and they were able to track that in their research. But the long-term, large-scale impact took place when it was truly baked into the company culture.
You know, one of the terms I use, and I think a lot of companies just have not thought about this, they really think about how they need to implement the work that they do, but they don't operationalize,
right?
Which is kind of that step beyond just the teaching, or a step beyond just the 2-day workshop. When I say operationalize, I think of like values, like, you know, there's a way to deepen the values. Because is that some part of what you do, or do you guys phrase it in a different way?
That's a huge part of what we do. It's we don't phrase it in exactly the same way, but we've got to take it from the conceptual levels to the strategic levels to the tactical execution pieces of how does this become a reality. I'll give you a great example of this. One of the programs that we offer in our larger term true cultural transformations along the way, one of the steps is a program that we have. It's called the Best Manager Academy. And in this area, managers have gone through the process of where they have had their employee engagement measured. Employee engagement has been measured. We tend to utilize the Gallup Q12 assessment directly through Gallup, and it actually does a great job of measuring that. One of the statements on there that really correlates to trust, it's the first statement, Gene, it's, I know what's expected of me at work. I know what's expected of me. Now, a lot of organizations get that data back, right? So they'll get the results on these surveys, but they have no idea, okay, how do I transform this into a conversation with my different employees? What we've done is we've taken each indicator for different engagement assessments that organizations are using, and we folded them into actual conversational tools that they have. So different questions that help create an understanding of how do I set expectations, not only for my team, but you remember playing telephone as a kid, Gene? You whisper something into somebody's ear, and then by the time it gets around the room, totally different, right? A lot of times leaders are in a place where they say this is what's expected of us. Everybody is hearing something totally different. So in understanding how we uniquely set expectations, just little granular shifts with each employee that we manage can get us that clarity on that outcome. That's just one example, but that's the way that we've really turned the key, and we lean into the leaders for folding these into their monthly coaching conversations, their conversations they're having. That's part of the framework that we follow.
Well, you mentioned the monthly conversations, and my mind went to the one-on-one. So I'm going to ask the question from that perspective. How does understanding the strengths of individual employees, maybe even understanding your own strengths, change the way those one-on-ones are held every week or every month?
Great question. So the way that it helps us is it helps us to understand who we are individually and who our team members are and who they're not. Self-awareness is that one critical trait that we all share. Simple example of this, perhaps maybe you're somebody that really operates, and when you're in a situation, you're in a team meeting, somebody throws out different questions, and you're able to just very, very quickly stitch your words together, come up, contribute, be shown where you're communicating, you have clarity on these thoughts, and that those dots just connect. There's others that operate where their talents are, they soak up everything that's said. They're a sponge. They're not going to have that initial response right now, but geez, you give them the time to think through what they've taken in from that meeting, and you meet with them the next morning, you'll be blown away as to what they have to say. But if we put the time on them and say, I need this out of you right now, you're shutting down a critical part of their talents. Now there's going to be, a gentle push and pull, and there are going to be times where we do need a response in the now, but we're going to have the awareness of, with this person, before I meet with them, they're going to need a little bit of a primer as to what we're going to go over so they can come in prepared. There's going to be others, they're going to operate best when we're putting it in front of them and they're just unpacking it as it goes. You're able to get into that understanding of how your people think, those that you lead that are in your care as a leader, how to best connect with them, how to best motivate them, how to best set expectations for them, those different elements.
Well, Darren, it's been fun to have you here at Leaders in the Trenches to talk about finding your strengths and about why that's so important. How can our audience get in touch with you guys if they want to follow up?
The best way to get in touch with me, with 34 Strong, is just visit 34strong.com. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find me on those vehicles as well. Be happy to connect with you and answer any questions. And again, we've got that Grind Greatness Genius link that's available for all your users. I think it can be a really powerful exercise for them to gain that clarity on where they really shine.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Gene. Truly a pleasure.
A great episode. I love this conversation because I really see the power in having a strong culture and having much more insight into who you're leading. There's so many tools out there, so I wanted to get a perspective of what some of those tools are, share that with you so that you can make some smart decisions about what you need for your company. If you are questioning what you need and you want to have a conversation with someone who has a very objective perspective of some of these tools, I'd love for you to reach out to me. I'd love to engage that conversation with you. We just have a quick chat to get to know you and what you're doing. As always, lead with courage. I'll see you next time.